Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now it's time to talk some Magi's grandson, otherwise known as Kenja no Mago, one of the new anime for the spring 2019 season. Today we are going to be talking about how Magi's grandson makes Shin overpowered. It's going to be a good one. It's a simple explanation video. We're going to be covering some stuff that appears in what I believe is the web novel, and I'm being very careful here. I don't know if what I found was a light novel or web novel. I also cannot find any place to buy the actual light novel, so it's a bit sketchy. Just keep that in mind. The web if it is a web novel, like if a light novel comes out later, it might get changed. If anyone can clarify for me in the comments down below, let me know. But for now, we'll just assume that the web novel is good enough. It's largely the same. I checked the manga, kind of the same. We can go through with it. So anyway, that little preface aside, in Kenja no Mago, in the first episode, you ended up seeing Shin using a lot of magic. And if you went into the first episode and you came out of it, one of the big things that you could probably figure out in terms of trying to figure out why Shin is so overpowered is that at some point he started using science talk, so you could imagine that him visualizing some sciencey things is what makes him overpowered. And the truth is, while that's a pretty good start, it's not really the full picture as to why Shin is overpowered, or, as to how Magi's grandson makes Shin overpowered. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. There's really 4 factors that contribute to Shin's overpoweredness, and they are Shin's mental age, Shin's memories of his past, Shin's grandfather, Merlin, and the kanji system. These 4 factors really skew things in Shin's favor, so let's go through each one so that you got a good enough idea of what is going on. First is Shin's mental age. This is important because, as the web novel reveals, Shin was totally conscious when Merlin found him. So from a very early age, Shin wasn't thinking like a child, he was thinking like an adult. This makes a difference when you consider that having an adult perspective predisposes him to being more diligent and allows him to think in more abstract terms. Because of this perspective, he fully understands how much of a game changer all the abilities he could learn are, and he also has the mind to be able to properly appreciate all the complexities that Merlin can teach him. Him being an adult lets him learn efficiently, as compared to some child who would just kind of maybe even try to play hooky at some points during magic lesson. Now on to the second factor, Shin's memory. This is important because in the fantasy world that Shin is reincarnated into, magic runs on imagination. As Shin says, magic is imagination. The phenomenon known as magic is the caster's imagination and their ability to materialize it. So the reason that Shin gets such a huge advantage is because, as he says, as an original resident of modern day Japan, overflowing with creativity who was then transported into this world, since incantation wasn't needed, it was easy enough to reproduce things you would usually only see in anime and manga. The general gist is that because people of a fantasy world haven't seen fantastical things, they can't produce fantastical things effectively. Shin noted that there was a lack of visual aid to help the people along with their process. Shin's science-aided magic gets more powerful because he's imagining the individual components of the process. The science effectively aids Shin's imagination. He is using that as a crutch. So when he needs to imagine what can make a flame bigger, well, Shin knows that imagining feeding it more oxygen would help that flame become bigger. Moving on to the third factor, Merlin. So it's one thing to have a kid that is willing and able to learn, but if you don't get someone that can teach him, that kid is going to take a long time to get anywhere. That's why Merlin is valuable, and thankfully the novel details some aspects of magic that Merlin really helps Shin with, and these are critical aspects. One was magic control. As Shin said, even if a person's imagination is stable, if something goes wrong and the magic is not properly invoked, it could turn into chaos. So magic control is the limiting factor that determines how grand or complicated magic can get, and thankfully for Shin, Merlin gave him daily training focused on improving his magical control. And since Merlin himself is a master at magic, Shin got to learn from one of the best magic users in the world, full of all the tips and tricks that most other people wouldn't know. And since Shin had an old mind, he was a sponge for that material. The final factor I want to cover I think is the most clever. It's the kanji language system. Now the quick bit on how kanji works is that every symbol is its own word. In the Magi's grandson world, enchantment works by writing a word onto an item. And in the Magi's grandson world, words are constructed like as in the English system, where you bring a string of characters together to convey a meaning. The more characters in a word, however, the harder and more expensive an enchanted item becomes. So do you see the loophole? If Shin did ultrasonic vibration with the world's method, he'd have to use 19 characters, which is already pushing the limits that he's already described in the episode. With kanji, he can produce the same meaning with 5 characters. Shin is effectively using a magic hack. And that's really neat. I really like that little idea. I like the trick. I think it was really cool to see it done in this series. It's one of the first times I saw it done in a series like this. So I really enjoyed it when I first read it. Now, how solid are these justifications for Shin's overpoweredness? If you were to really review them critically. For me, when I thought about it, I think only Factor 1 and Factor 3 are really solid. The memories I think is solid depending on how you argue it, but there's a lot of problems that I spot in it just from our world has so many creation myths, our world has had so many artists. It's kind of ridiculous that this world is so culturally, well, inept that it doesn't have people producing art that people can use as visual aids. But if science plays a big role and actually knowing the science gives you a significant advantage, if the science actually models how this world works, then you could see why the memories are more solid than they would initially appear. The one that I think is really busted though is the Kanji Hack, just because I find it very strange that people did not figure out how to make a magic exclusive language, especially when our world has people who have done that from centuries ago. The idea of using a symbol to convey complex meaning, I think that's been around for so long in our history that it's very ridiculous that a medieval level society did not come to that conclusion earlier. So I think the kanji one is a little bit easier to break down. But if you are interested in that, I will potentially make another video. It depends on the interest in this video. If you guys really want to hear about that, I'll bring up a video. I'll bring up better points. I'll show you some cool little pictures from like the Gnostic Museum and all that, so you guys can check out how much people tried to make communication work with paintings and images. So if you want that kind of video, just let me know down below. It'll cover, I guess it's technically more of a mythology video, so you guys, if you want that, let me know down below. But I don't know if you can tell how this sounds. We're pretty much at the end of the video now, man. It's over. Like, the video's done. I'm calling it a day. Overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. Pretty short, but I hope you got something out of it. I hope you have a bigger appreciation for what exactly is going on with Shin under the hood. Anyway, let me know what you thought down below, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. Oh, and if you like this video and you like Kenja no Mago, subscribe and leave a like. My soul.